On the 17th of November 2018, in a fourth-floor suite of the Hotel Urban in Madrid, a woman known to her agency only as Alara began the final, critical phase of Operation Labyrinth. To any observer, had one been permitted into the meticulously secured room, she would have appeared to be a diligent financial consultant, her posture perfect, her focus absolute, as her fingers moved across the encrypted keyboard of a nondescript, hardened laptop. The room itself was a sterile bubble of operational security, swept twice daily for listening devices by autonomous micro-drones that mapped the space in radio frequencies and thermal imaging, ensuring its electronic integrity. Her legend, that of Ana Serrano, a specialist in supply chain risk for corporations operating in politically unstable regions, was an 18-month fabrication of such depth that it possessed a credit history, a portfolio of published academic articles on logistical vulnerabilities, and a network of digitally created professional contacts who would vouch for her existence. Yet, Ana Serrano was a ghost, a sophisticated digital construct, and Alara, the operator, was the sole architect of the systematic demolition of one of the world's most clandestine arms trafficking networks. A task she was executing not with a weapon, but with carefully crafted lines of code, psychological manipulation, and an unshakable patience honed over years of intelligence work. The weapon was information, and her hotel room was the battlefield. The strategic problem had crystallized within the intelligence community over the preceding 2 years, a frustrating and lethal puzzle that defied conventional solutions. A new and alarmingly efficient pipeline had begun funneling sophisticated, state-of-the-art weaponry from the decaying arsenals of former Eastern Bloc nations into the hands of non-state actors in the Levant and North Africa. This was not the typical trade in aging Kalashnikovs and RPG-7s. The manifests, pieced together from battlefield debris and fragmentary human reports, included third-generation man-portable air defense systems, manpads, capable of threatening commercial aviation, advanced anti-tank-guided missiles, ATGMs, that had neutralized modern main battle tanks, and encrypted communication suites that rendered entire militias deaf and blind to signals intelligence. The network's logistical footprint was virtually non-existent. It bypassed traditional shipping lanes, eschewed corrupt port officials, and never used the same route twice. Satellite imagery proved useless against its methods, which involved breaking shipments into innocuous components, each transported by a different shell corporation through a different country, only to be reassembled at the final destination by technicians smuggled in separately. Previous attempts to interdict shipments had failed spectacularly. A raid on a suspected warehouse in Constanța, Romania, yielded only agricultural equipment, while a targeted strike on a convoy in the Sinai Peninsula destroyed a shipment of medical supplies, a deliberate misdirection that had cost the agency significant political capital. The network was a hydra, and every severed head seemed to give rise to 2 more, each more cautious and sophisticated than the last. The architect of this logistical masterpiece was a man known in intelligence circles only by the code name the Logician. His real name was Andrei Volkov, a former colonel in the main intelligence directorate of a dissolved Soviet bloc state who had vanished after the collapse of his government, taking with him an encyclopedic knowledge of covert logistics, counterintelligence, and cryptography. Psychological profiles assembled from old service records and the testimony of defectors painted a portrait of a man who was pathologically meticulous, paranoid, and utterly devoid of ideology, beyond a clinical appreciation for systems and their efficient operation. He viewed arms trafficking not as a political act, but as the ultimate logistical challenge, a complex equation to be solved. His operational security was legendary. He never used a telephone, communicating exclusively through a multi-layered proprietary encryption system that piggybacked on the noise of online gaming servers, embedding fragmented messages within seemingly random data packets. He never met his suppliers or his clients, operating through a series of cutouts and blind trusts managed by a Swiss fiduciary firm he had compromised years earlier. His financial dealings were an impenetrable maze of cryptocurrency tumblers, offshore holding companies registered in non-extradition jurisdictions, and transactions masked as payments for art, precious metals, and consulting services. The logician was not merely a target. He was a system, a self-healing and adaptive network that learned from every attempt to disrupt it, making him one of the most significant threats to global stability operating in the shadows. The conventional approach of seizing shipments or eliminating key lieutenants was deemed not only ineffective but counterproductive, as it merely forced the logician to evolve his methods. A new, audacious proposal was tabled by a small, forward-thinking cell within Ilara's agency. A plan that shifted the focus from the physical to the virtual, from the kinetic to the financial and psychological. The solution was not to attack the network's limbs, but to induce a systemic autoimmune disease that would cause it to attack itself from within. The plan, codenamed Labyrinth, proposed to insert a single, highly skilled remote operative into the network's digital periphery. This operative would not attempt a brute force cyber attack, which the logician's sophisticated defenses would almost certainly detect and repel. Instead, they would execute a long-term campaign of social engineering and digital infiltration, targeting not the core of the network, but its weakest and most human link: the ecosystem of financial intermediaries, corrupt bankers, and logistics coordinators who facilitated its operations. The primary obstacles were immense. It required the creation of a digital legend of unparalleled authenticity, the development of bespoke malware that was subtle enough to bypass the logician's scrutiny, and, most critically, an operative with the psychological fortitude to maintain a complex deception for months in total isolation under the constant threat of discovery. Failure would not just mean the loss of an asset. It would alert the logician that he was being targeted in a new way, forcing him deeper underground and making him effectively untouchable for a generation. The technical preparation for Operation Labyrinth was a monumental undertaking, consuming the resources of the agency's entire technical services division for over a year. The cornerstone of the operation was the creation of Ana Serrano's corporate entity, a boutique risk consultancy named Logos Strategic Solutions. A team of developers built a sophisticated web presence for Logos, complete with a history of fabricated client testimonials, detailed case studies on supply chain security, subtly seeded with keywords designed to attract the network's periphery, and a secure client portal. To backstop this digital facade, the agency's financial unit established a series of bank accounts in multiple jurisdictions, conducting a complex series of legitimate, low-value transactions over many months to build a credible financial history. They purchased server space in dozens of countries, routing Logos's digital traffic through a labyrinthine network of virtual private networks and proxies that made its origin impossible to trace. The most critical piece of technology developed was the malware, codenamed Janus. It was not a virus in the traditional sense, but a Trojan horse disguised as a highly specialized financial modeling tool. The software was designed to appeal directly to the greed and professional vanity of a mid-level financial criminal, offering the ability to analyze and conceal illicit transactions with unparalleled efficiency. Its malicious component was deeply embedded and entirely passive. It did not exfiltrate data or disrupt systems. Instead, its sole function was to map the architecture of any network it was introduced to, identifying key nodes, communication protocols, and data flow patterns, and then to create a microscopic, encrypted backdoor through which Ilara could later introduce subtle data corruption. It was a scalpel not a sledgehammer, designed for a single specific surgical strike. The selection of the operative was the most critical element of the plan. The psychological profile required was unique. A candidate needed the cold, analytical mind of a forensic accountant, the patient cunning of a master chess player, and the mental resilience of a deep cover agent. They found their candidate not in the ranks of their field operatives, but in the agency's own financial intelligence unit. Alara was a civilian analyst in her late 30s, holder of doctorates in both economics and cryptography, who had been instrumental in unraveling several major terror financing networks. Her recruitment file noted an extraordinary ability to detect minute anomalies in vast datasets, a skill she attributed to a mild form of synesthesia which allowed her to perceive numbers and patterns as colors and shapes. More importantly, psychological assessments revealed a profound capacity for emotional detachment and compartmentalization, likely developed as a coping mechanism after her husband, a diplomat, was killed in a terrorist bombing several years prior, an attack facilitated by weapons from an untraceable source. Her motivation was not patriotic fervor, but a cold, calculated desire for systemic retribution. Her training was tailored specifically for the mission. It involved no physical combat or weapons handling. Instead, she spent 9 months in intensive training simulations, learning to build and manage digital legends, practicing social engineering against seasoned counterintelligence officers, and mastering the Janus software. She was conditioned to withstand the profound psychological pressures of long-term isolation, with handlers using stress-inducing techniques to test her ability to maintain her cover identity, Ana Serrano, even when sleep-deprived and mentally exhausted. She learned to live, think, and breathe as Ana, a detached professional consultant whose only concern was the bottom line. The construction of the Ana Serrano legend was a masterclass in identity fabrication. The goal was not merely to create a believable cover, but to build a magnet, a persona so compelling and useful to the criminal underworld that it would be drawn into the logician's orbit organically. The process began 18 months before the operation's launch. The agency's narrative specialists crafted a detailed biography for Ana. Born in Argentina to Spanish parents, educated in the United States and the United Kingdom, with a career spanning stints at major banks in Zurich and Hong Kong before she struck out on her own as a consultant. This backstory was supported by a wealth of fabricated documentation, including university transcripts, employment records, and even a forged birth certificate, all entered into the relevant official databases by clandestine assets. The next layer was her professional life. A team created social media profiles for her on professional networking sites, carefully curating a list of connections and slowly building her credibility. They ghost-wrote and published several articles under her name in obscure but respected financial journals, focusing on topics like sanctions evasion and the use of shell corporations in emerging markets, subjects designed to act as bait. They even enrolled her in virtual industry conferences, with a non-attributable avatar logging in and asking pertinent questions in text-based forums to create a record of her participation. Props were established in the physical world as well. A law firm in Madrid was retained on a small monthly fee to provide a registered business address for Logo Strategic Solutions, and a mail forwarding service was set up, creating a tangible paper trail. By the time Alara checked into the Hotel Urban, Ana Serrano was not just a name. She was a verifiable entity with a deep, cross-referenced, and entirely fictional history. Alara's insertion into Madrid was deliberately low-key. She arrived on a commercial flight from Lisbon, traveling on a legitimate Spanish passport issued to Ana Serrano, a document obtained through a long-dormant asset within the Spanish civil registry. The Hotel Urban was selected after a rigorous analysis of dozens of potential locations. It offered long-stay suites with kitchenettes, allowing her to minimize contact with hotel staff. Its communications infrastructure was superb, providing multiple redundant high-speed fiber optic lines that could be independently and anonymously subscribed to. Crucially, its physical layout and the surrounding urban geography provided clear lines of sight to several secure communication nodes established by the agency on nearby rooftops, allowing for encrypted data bursts to be transmitted securely without relying solely on internet infrastructure. Her suite became a hermetically sealed operational environment. She brought with her only 2 suitcases, one containing clothing and personal effects consistent with her legend, the other containing the mission hardware. 2 identical hardened laptops, one for operations, one a clean spare. A set of custom-designed solid-state drives with physical self-destruct mechanisms, and a compact satellite communication device for emergency use only. Her daily routine was rigidly structured to reinforce her cover and maintain her mental discipline. She would wake at 600, engage in physical exercise within the suite, and then spend 12 to 14 hours working as Ana Serrano. Her only contact with the outside world was through encrypted text-based communications with her handler, a daily check-in that consisted of a single, coded phrase confirming she was safe and the operation was proceeding. For months, this was her entire existence, an isolated world of data, deception, and unwavering focus. The execution phase began not with a direct approach to the logician, but with the careful and patient targeting of a peripheral but critical node in his network. A mid-level compliance officer at a private bank in Cyprus named Nikos Papas. Intelligence analysis had identified Papas as a key facilitator, a man whose greed and ambition far outstripped his caution. He was the gatekeeper who laundered the initial payments for the logician's arms deals. Ilara, operating as Ana Serrano, did not contact Papas directly. Instead, she identified another of his clients through forensic analysis of leaked financial data, a Russian oligarch under international sanctions. Posing as a representative for a potential buyer of one of the oligarch's distressed assets, she initiated contact, creating a complex and entirely fictional business problem that would require Papas's specific and illicit expertise to solve. Over several weeks of encrypted emails and secure chats, Ana built a rapport with Papas, impressing him with her deep knowledge of international financial loopholes and her calm, professional demeanor. She was not a criminal. She was a problem solver, a narrative that appealed to Papas's self-image as a clever financial operator rather than a common money launderer. The final step of the seduction was the introduction of the Janus software. Ana explained to Papas that for their complex transaction to proceed without attracting the attention of regulators, they needed a specialized platform to model the flow of funds and ensure every layer of the concealment was perfect. She presented Janus as a proprietary tool developed by her firm, a gift to a valued business partner. She sent him the file, knowing that his professional arrogance and the allure of a powerful new tool would override any security protocols he might have. The moment of infection was anticlimactic, a silent event that occurred thousands of miles from Ilara's hotel room. Papas, intrigued by the Janus software, installed it on his personal workstation, a machine he also used to communicate with his most sensitive clients, including a cutout for the logician. The malware activated, its passive mapping routine beginning its silent work. For 3 weeks, Ilara did nothing but observe. From her suite in Madrid, she monitored the data trickling back through the encrypted backdoor. Janus provided her with a complete schematic of Papas's digital environment, and through him, a partial map of the logician's outer network. She saw the flow of encrypted messages, the structure of the shell corporations, and the pathways of the financial transactions. She identified the key communication nodes, the dead-drop email accounts, and the specific timing of data transfers. The logician's system was as brilliant as the intelligence reports had suggested. A decentralized web designed for maximum resilience. But now, she had a foothold. The build-up to the climax was a period of intense, nerve-wracking patience. She needed the logician's network to fully incorporate the compromised node, to trust the data flowing from Papas's machine implicitly. She continued her fabricated business dealings with Papas, slowly increasing the complexity and value of their transactions, making him more and more dependent on the Janus software and, by extension, on her. She was a spider, slowly strengthening the web around her prey, waiting for the precise moment to strike. The tension in her hotel room was palpable only to her. She existed in a state of heightened awareness, analyzing every byte of data, every subtle shift in the network's behavior, knowing that a single misstep would unravel the entire operation. The act of dismantling the network, when it came, was not a singular event, but a carefully orchestrated cascade of failures, initiated by Alara over a period of 72 hours. Her first move was subtle. Using the backdoor created by Janus, she did not steal information, but began to inject infinitesimally small errors into the network's data stream. A single digit was altered in the account number for a payment to a key logistics supplier in the Balkans. The payment, a substantial sum for an upcoming shipment of missile components, was consequently routed not to the supplier, but to a dormant account that had been flagged by financial intelligence agencies. The supplier, receiving no payment, halted the shipment. Simultaneously, Alara subtly corrupted the metadata on a set of encrypted shipping manifests being sent to a receiving team in Libya. The change was microscopic, altering the geodetic datum used for the GPS coordinates of the planned rendezvous point. This sent the receiving team to a location 3 kilometers away in the open desert, where they waited for a shipment that would never arrive. These were precision strikes, designed to create confusion and sow distrust. The true masterstroke, however, was psychological. Alara began to manipulate the communications between the logician's key lieutenants. She intercepted and slightly altered messages, changing tones, adding or removing phrases to create a sense of paranoia and suspicion. A message confirming a successful transaction was altered to sound ambiguous, implying a portion of the funds might be missing. A routine inquiry about a delayed shipment was rephrased to sound like an accusation of incompetence or theft. The logician's meticulously designed system, built on a foundation of professional trust between high-level criminals, began to fracture under the strain of manufactured doubt. As the network descended into chaos, Alara initiated the final phase. She compiled a series of anonymous, encrypted data packets containing specific, actionable intelligence, shipping routes, account numbers, and the identities of key personnel, and transmitted them to a consortium of international law enforcement agencies. The tips were carefully curated to appear as if they were coming from a disgruntled insider within the logician's own organization, a narrative reinforced by the internal chaos she had already engineered. Within hours, arrests began. The logistics supplier in the Balkans was apprehended by local authorities. The compliance officer, Nikos Papas, was taken into custody in Cyprus, his systems seized as evidence. The receiving team in Libya, stranded and agitated, was intercepted by a rival militia that had been tipped off by a regional intelligence service. The logician, isolated and receiving a flood of conflicting and alarming reports, realized his network was compromised. His paranoia, once his greatest strength, now became his fatal weakness. Believing he had been betrayed by his inner circle, he broke his own cardinal rule. He activated a contingency escape plan, a physical move that made him visible for the first time in years. This was the moment Ilara and her agency had anticipated. As he attempted to cross a border in Eastern Europe using a forged passport, he was quietly apprehended by a waiting tactical team, his capture the direct result of the systemic collapse Ilara had triggered from her hotel room. Ilara's extraction was as quiet and digital as her attack. While law enforcement agencies celebrated the capture of the logician and the dismantling of his network, her work was not yet finished. She initiated a final protocol, a digital self-destruct sequence for her entire operational infrastructure. The Janus malware on Pappas's computer and any other system it had migrated to received a final command. It erased its own code, then overwrote the sectors of the hard drives where it had resided with random data, leaving behind no forensic trace of its existence. Simultaneously, the servers hosting the websites for Logos Strategic Solutions were wiped clean. The associated domain names were relinquished, and the complex web of proxies and VPNs that had masked her location was dissolved. The social media profiles for Ana Serrano were deleted. The bank accounts were closed, their remaining funds transferred through a series of anonymous transactions to a charity. Within the space of an hour, every digital crumb of Ana Serrano's 18-month existence vanished. Ilara then performed a final physical sanitization of her hotel suite. She used a portable degausser to wipe the hard drives of her laptops before physically destroying their data chips with a hydraulic press tool. She incinerated her notebooks and documents in a small, high-temperature burn bag. She then packed her single suitcase of personal belongings, walked out of the Hotel Urban, took a taxi to the airport, and flew to a neutral country using her true, non-operational passport. The woman who had single-handedly crippled a global criminal enterprise left Madrid as anonymously as she had arrived, leaving behind nothing but an immaculate hotel room. The consequences of Operation Labyrinth were profound and far-reaching. The immediate impact was the complete and utter collapse of the world's most sophisticated, independent arms trafficking network. The seizure of the logician and his key lieutenants, combined with the financial and logistical data recovered from their systems, led to dozens of subsequent arrests across multiple continents, effectively cauterizing the weapons pipeline for the foreseeable future. The strategic value of the intelligence gathered was immense, providing Western agencies with an unprecedented look into the methodologies of modern illicit logistics, from cryptocurrency laundering techniques to the exploitation of encrypted communication platforms. More significantly, the operation served as a powerful proof of concept for a new doctrine of intelligence warfare: the remote, low-footprint, digitally focused operation. It demonstrated that a single, highly skilled operative, equipped with the right tools and a meticulously constructed legend, could achieve strategic effects that previously would have required large-scale, high-risk physical interventions. However, the operation also raised complex moral and ethical questions that were debated internally for years. The methods used, particularly the psychological manipulation and the deliberate sowing of discord, bordered on entrapment and represented a form of digital warfare for which there was no established legal or ethical framework. The long-term psychological cost to Ilara was also a significant concern for her handlers. She had spent months in near-total isolation, submerged in a fabricated identity, her mind a constant battlefield of deception and analysis. Upon her return, she was placed on extended leave, undergoing a lengthy psychological debriefing process designed to help her decompress from the immense strain and reintegrate her operational persona with her true self. The transformation was permanent. The clinical detachment that made her the perfect operative for Labyrinth was a quality she could never fully shed. A silent, personal cost for a silent, monumental victory. In the final analysis, Operation Labyrinth redefined the parameters of modern espionage. It underscored the critical shift from physical battlefields to digital ones, where the most potent weapons are not explosives but information, and the most effective soldiers are not commandos but analysts and coders operating from anonymous rooms across the globe. Alara's success was not a story of heroic action in the traditional sense, but one of immense patience, intellectual rigor, and psychological endurance. She never saw her target, never held a weapon, and never placed herself in direct physical danger. Yet she neutralized a threat that had baffled the combined efforts of multiple intelligence agencies. Her victory was a testament to the power of a perfectly executed procedure, a symphony of technology, psychology, and tradecraft that played out in the silent, invisible realm of data. The file on the logician was closed, but the playbook for Operation Labyrinth became a foundational text for a new generation of intelligence officers. A stark illustration that in the 21st century, the most devastating blow could be struck not by a missile, but by a keystroke. Is it justifiable to manipulate an individual's reality and provoke paranoia to dismantle a greater evil? Where is the line between intelligence gathering and manufacturing a crime? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel.